Uh, we're recording. Yeah. And this is the class that I'm going to talk about faces. Yay. I had a couple of problems before this. Quill was crashing on me. Also, I hope it doesn't happen again. Uh, it's been kind of like, I think it's because of the when you pin the windows on your Oculus Dash. Sometimes that happens. So it's a little unstable. But anyways, welcome to this class again. Yay! I'm pretty excited about this because I really love drawing faces and people's characters. I do caricatures myself. I don't know if you've seen some of my caricature stuff. So this is a subject that is really close to me. I really like this subject. I observe people faces. I look at people's faces a lot, and I like to analyze and figure out what's so interesting about the face of people and everything. So yeah, let's talk about. And I brought this picture, especially I like this one because you can see all these different faces, right? I recommend watching this show if you haven't. Anyway, let's get down to business. I want to talk about what's so interesting about the faces for me when I draw characters and people. The elements on a face is are always the same, like just like when you draw a human body as well. But especially the face, even though they all have the same elements, they all have eyes, a nose, a mouth, and a basic structure, right? Um, but look how different each one is and how much personality each one has and how different they are, even though they have the same elements. And it's all about proportions. It's all about distance between parts of the face, right? So if we are looking at proportions in when I do portraits of people, I normally tend to take measurements. If I look at the eye level, and then suddenly I look at the nose level, and I look at the mouth level and the chin level and the base of the hair. So those are measurements. Those are things that you can measure by distance, and it's not mathematical at all. The way I work when I draw is very like just calculating very roughly by eye. So I try to think, okay, the if this is the whole of the face, the half of it, the 50% mark would be more or less where the nose is, but just a little bit lower. So it's not the 50%, it's just a little bit lower than the half. So I take that measurement. Like let's take her face, for example, and I say, okay, that's the beginning of the hair, that's the chin. And if I do the middle of it, the very center of that, more or less is this, right? So that's where the eye level lands. So that is different for every person, right? So like the eyebrow level, and then and the beginning of the hair level, so the forehead level. So there's a proportion there compared to the nose level and the mouth level. So all that, it's interesting to calculate the proportions of each person, right? Because it's different. Like look for example of this guy, his forehead is much smaller compared to this guy. There's a there's a smaller proportion here, and the distance between brow level and nose level is bigger than this guy over here. Um, sorry, the eye level versus the nose level. So he has a bigger nose. He has a bigger distance here, and then distance between nose level and mouth level. I would say it's more or less the same as this guy, maybe a little bigger. So all these measurements are very important to figure out when you draw faces for the first. I mean, not for the first time. When you're learning how to draw in traditional drawing, right? And then the other thing that I wrote down is silhouette. And silhouette is also very, very important when you look at a person's face. You're not just looking at here to here. Also, you're looking at the everything: the hair, hairdo, ears, right, and then the connection with the neck and the anatomy of all that. But the silhouette that it's creating around the face is so particular and it's so distinct. It's a huge distinction that also sometimes is like a symbol almost. It's almost like this person has this silhouette and it's unique. You know, it has that, especially a woman with long hair, the silhouette outside of the face. It kind of sometimes that's it. You got that, and that's enough sometimes to recognize a person. Like some people have a face shape as a triangle, right? And you immediately recognize, oh, that's whatever. And some people have the shape of an inverse triangle. Sorry, I just did the same thing. uh, like inverse triangle, right? Some people have that silhouette, and some people has really round shape all together with the hair and the beginning of the hair. And most people have oval shape. You know, it's like the most common shape, right? And then yeah, I think that's kind of really important to take in account when you start drawing faces. I recommend, like, when you're if you're not experienced in drawing, I recommend just looking at pictures and try to figure out, okay, what's the shape? It's a triangle, it's a rectangle, it's a tapered rectangle, or what kind of a structure is the silhouette, right? And figure it out from there, and then start looking at proportions and measurements. So those are the things that I look at normally. And then I wrote down a structure because obviously anatomy is really important when you're drawing a face or any part of the body of a human person. Um, Obviously, we need to learn about anatomy and what's going on inside, right? So we know there's a skull inside of each person, and the skull has a particular shape. Let's try to figure out the skull on this guy here. Um, so the skull has the nose holes here. We have the teeth. More, and I'm drawing a very cartoony skull, but just to it's kind of good to understand what really is going on in there. Uh, in order to, especially when you draw in three dimensions like we do in Quill. So the jaw lines are not flat. They're obviously they have dimension, right? And the same for the teeth structure, all the teeth line and everything. They're not. It's not a flat line, so it's a bit of a curvature, right?
It's like a cylinder.
Yeah, pretty much. And then this the nose, obviously, it's there's no bones inside, so there's just a pair of holes in there. And then when you're drawing the circle, but also it goes back that in depth, right? That circle, so you have to kind of get that in the structure there, the three dimensions of that skull. And these were supposed to be the cheek lines, the cheekbone, right? You can really see that cheekbone over here in this character. So that goes over there, and it kind of And I know this structure by heart because I've been studying this for years, and I almost don't even think about it when I draw it because I know what's in there. And it's very recommendable to really study anatomy um, in a way that you already know it by heart because you've drawn that anatomy so many times. You know what's in there, right? Um, well, that's really bad skull, but the idea is uh, kind of knowing what's affecting the skin, right? So we have the structure here of the whole of the in the if this is a skull, the eyes are basically floating balls that are in this hole, and all around the eyes are is just meat and skin, right? And these muscles that are kind of hugging the eyeball. Uh, and here there's a connection between this corner, and there's a nice like a corner. You can really separate the two. It's almost like you when you have lighting, you can really see a difference in the lighting here because there's a nice corner here in the skull.
Yeah, it's like the sides are cut off.
Yeah, and it's really good to emphasize that when you're drawing because it's going to help you to have a structure in your drawing, right? um, I think that's more or less what I wanted to talk about this. I guess it's good to have it in the back of your head when you're really sketching a face, especially in VR in 3 dimensions, because we need to have that structure in place, right? So, how am I doing in time? It's at
About 15 in.
oh yeah, good. We have plenty of time. So I'm gonna maybe instead of being more like a lesson, I thought this would be more like a demo. So I'm just gonna maybe start drawing and not do more of a not do so much of a class and do more like a demo. So I'm gonna just looking at the picture and try to figure out, and I want to show you more or less what's my process. I'm gonna look at this guy's face. I like this guy. He's an interesting face. So how do I start? I don't know. It's just it's very organic the way I start. Uh, just okay. It's only profile this guy, but it's okay. I'm gonna do like almost like a profile, but I tend to do 3/4 sketch first when I do faces, and then in VR, obviously we need to have all the surrounding, all the 3 dimensions and everything. But I normally start like this, and you're gonna see why. And it's better to me doing that than doing a profile or front. Okay, what's his mouth is something like this. It's kind of nice, big, meaty lips. The chin goes there, and I guess what I do a lot is try to get these corners to really be very defined, right? And when I even in Quill, I already draw in the 3rd dimension. I don't do because when I started working in Quill, my tendency was to draw a face like in 2D. That was my process for the longest time. I did this, and it's all flat, right? And then what I would do is just grab the elements and kind of make 3 dimension out of it. Just two and a half dimension, right? Just kind of get these little pieces and move them around in space, and now we have a little bit more of three dimensions. And that's what I would do for the longest time. Just start 2D and go into a 3D later. But lately, I become much more efficient drawing in 3D. My hand is more trained, I guess, and I'm already comfortable just moving my hand in three dimensions. So when I draw the jaw line, I'm already thinking in the third dimension, and my hand is already.
Was it frozen for you?
Oh, you guys are.
No, I see it. I see it. It's
It's all
fine.
good.
Yeah, for me at least. I'm in Northern California. Maybe that's why.
Yeah,
It's still
mine.
Hey
working for
Daniel, can
me.
you spin around? Can you spin around that head? I want to see how 3D it is.
This one.
Yeah, can you
Oh,
spin around it?
this one I just started.
Oh, I see. I got you. I got you.
I just
Nice.
started,
It's cool
so it's not completely 3D right now. But if you can see
though.
the jaw,
No, but
if
it's
you,
3/4.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm working on three quarters
that's
to
interesting.
to
Very
start
interesting.
to start
I was
with.
wondering.
This
Mm,
is my process. I start with the three quarter, and the jawline. I'm starting to really get that three dimensions in. So once I have the jawline, I start to connect some dots, right? And I start to get that structure, that anatomy in there. And I'm already moving my hand in three dimensions in there. I'm not even starting to do flat and then later move it in space. I'm already that that ear gives me a nice connection point with the jawline. So
that's so interesting. It's almost like you're drawing it like a 3D relief, like the back of the head that you don't see is
yeah,
flat, and then
exactly.
everything else comes forward towards you in 3D. That's amazing.
So that's my process because I feel like that's the way I feel more comfortable. But everybody draws in a different way. But as you can see, this little gesture is so simple, but it helps a lot. So I that line that I started the forehead line, I just grab that sketch and I move it a little bit in around, and I try to feel the three dimensions of the forehead in there. You cannot see on the flat video, but I'm moving my hand like in a 3D space. So
Oh yeah.
doing that really helps a lot to visualize. Okay, that's gonna be the forehead. And even though it's not final, but I get a better sense of the three dimensions now. And the same for all these sketch lines here. I'm just gonna move it a little bit in space to connect with that. And now I have a better three dimensions on that. So I slowly, but first I try to get the silhouette of the guy and try to get that similarity and just try to get this portrait of this person. Um, let's get that curly hair, and I don't see the rest, but I'm gonna just made it up, and I draw it almost like as if a 2D drawing, but also my hand is kind of far, like I'm moving my hand in three dimensions here, and this is the back of the head. So I'm just gonna get that back of the head more or less, and the neck. It's very important to kind of establish more or less the dimension and the thickness of that neck. So I draw this collarbone line, and that gives me a clue of how thick is the neck more or less. And that's all I need to get a feeling for the face. And then the other important bit is the hairline, right? The connection between ear, forehead, and how is exactly that hairline that the character has. And that's kind of more or less with some of these curls that coming in. Okay, that's kind of a basic structure, and I have the eyeline here, and it's not completely three dimensional, but it's good enough for me to. It's a suggestive. It has a it suggests three dimension, even though it's not completely three dimension. So I'm just gonna get those eyes more or less sketched out to give me an idea of what those eyes look like. And then I'm gonna start grab tooling around. And the grab tool is really a lifesaver for these kind of jobs. I mean, this kind of work, working with face and stuff.
Hey, Daniel,
Yep.
do you find when you go back to 2D sketching of faces as like, do you think you're improving from doing all this extra 3D kind of sketching, or what's your experience? Does it just feel the same?
It's kind of interesting for me because I feel like I enjoy more sketching in Quill than
It it
in
looks amazingly fun what you're doing right now. I'm like mesmerized.
and it's kind of it's so quick for me to get this done, and I get a profile, I get a okay, the front doesn't look very good, but the three quarter looks okay, and I get a feeling for the character. um I'm just gonna get
I
those
mean, yeah, I've
eyebrow.
worked very similarly when I'm, especially how you're saying how you originally did completely 2D and then tried to force the 3D on it. I did that exact same thing
Yeah.
when I first started
Same with
out.
me. Same with me. That's what I thought you did, actually.
Hmm.
So, and notice that I never draw the back of it. I don't draw any of this stuff because that's enough for me as a guide. I don't need any more. I don't need to keep drawing the other ear. I don't need to do the rest of the jawline. It's fine because this little wireframe sculpture, it's enough for me to understand the three dimensions of that face. So I can. But then what I normally would do is use grab tool to really tweak this stuff and make it even more three dimensional. So grabbing grab tool inside of the head, kind of pushing around, just kind of get that bulging. If the the front face obviously it doesn't look good, but I grab this part here, I just kind of deform it so the each side of the face has the same measurement more or less. I just kind of get that going in there. Um, Profile, just kind of figure out what's the profile like. Uh, grab tooling really helps a lot to get everything with the right proportions, and gotta be careful it doesn't look too smooth. I think I distorted this a little too much. But yeah, normally I would do this kind of stuff. Especially on the eyes, I do this kind of thing. So,
It's
but
really interesting to see you work this way because I'm so used to just doing the lathe technique with the sphere and then trying to shape the face around it, like
yeah,
just
you
using
can
the
do that
grab tool.
after. You can totally do the lathing after you have the sketch. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, the sketch is essential because I wanna have a blueprint first of what the like in traditional drawing. If I do like a rough light pass, light draw,
Right.
and
Yeah, it
then
seems
So
really helpful.
I might be jumping the gun here because it's probably something you're going to get to. But how accurately do you follow this sketch? Like, are you, when you're assembling your face, like for its kind of final pass, are you really adhering to what you've got here, or are you more so just using it as a very loose guideline?
yeah, this is a very loose guideline. I try to keep it as a reference more than anything, and sometimes I try to preserve, some of the sketch lines that I do have because I like them so much. So I try to preserve those if I think they're important for the portrait. Just make sure, for example, the lip, everything. I think it needs to be really sharp. So I'm just trying to get those corners very defined. And then later, these corners defined is going to help me to figure out how to build it in Quill, how to make it um, with the tools that we have. Because Twill has limited amount of tools, and that's what I learned in the last couple of, especially working on Remedy. Um, learn with the tools that you have. Learn to work with the tools that you have, um, and make the most out of it. So let's. I'm gonna talk about that now when I clean up this. We and do the final model. But before doing the final model, I just go around and I do what I'm doing right now. It's just really uh, just try to tweak those proportions and everything to make sure that it looks right. Obviously, the eyes, I haven't done anything, so just gonna make sure the character is the character that I want to build before I build it. Because building takes a long time, and it's it's a process to build with
Oh
Quill
yeah.
with the tools that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So before spending all the time, so I really want to get the sketch nailed, and that's what I did with my mother caricature as well. I spend a lot of time with the sketch face, just make sure that she looks exactly the way I want it, and then after uh, I started building. And yeah, the eyebrow. Uh, grab tooling the eyebrow is really important as well because it gives you that structure of the skull, right? So eyebrows are very important to really have a three-dimensional. They seem flat when you see them from the front, but in 3D they have this corner right here, and that goes in depth, and it kind of follows the structure of the skull. And there's like a corner of the skull right here, what I was talking about before. Let's try to get those things in, right? And here again, the structure of the the, the cheekbone of the skull, all that stuff. I try to do little markers, especially with the face of this guy, which is kind of very sharp. It's very different to do this kind of face and then doing a girl's with a very soft features, and that's a different type of. But I would even with soft features, I would try to establish lines to kind of figure out the structure, right? The skull. Even though those lines are going to disappear eventually because it's supposed to look like softer. Um, I'm kind of looking
You
now.
are about 30 minutes in.
Okay, 30 minutes. Okay, I think it's a good time to start building. Just want to get those. He has a thicker eyebrows, I think. I should have done Berlin. It's okay.
On next week's episode.
Yeah,
This looks awesome. No, you're capturing him totally.
Yep, kind of piggybacking on what you said about the eyebrows. Those I was making a face for my Mother's Day piece too, and the eyebrows pretty much like changed everything when I put them in because they're your like high visibility, almost like contour line following your form, and
yeah,
it really is able to make the forehead and like those planar shifts pop.
totally. Yeah, and again, it's not only really great for expression. They're very expressive devices for communication, non-verbal communication, but also they're great for structure to get that structure of the skull, and it gives the drawing a much better, you know, more solid drawing. Right? People always talk about, oh, you have to have solid drawing. You have to have, and to me, solid drawing means knowing the structure of what you're drawing, the internal structure, and kind of making sure that you apply that. Okay, doesn't really look like him, but but
It looks good.
it's fine. It's fine. It's just for the demonstration purpose. Okay. So what I would normally do now is do another layer. So this one we're gonna call it rough. And that's gonna be color. Okay. Here. Sorry, I'm obsessing about this a little bit now for no reason.
Oh, you're good. We all do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
For no reason. And that's why I'm not so fast as Goro. Okay.
That and his forearms.
Yeah, he just goes for it. No, yeah. Anyway, it's not good to talk about somebody if he's not in the room.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be.
It's not polite.
I mean,
It's not polite.
he'll-
Let's not do
He's
that.
probably commenting on it.
yeah, I'm sure he'll be watching through later and be like, Tyler, stupid forearms joke.
Daniel,
All right.
do you use this Quill stuff at work, like actually for work? Or
No,
I mean,
no. I wish.
no, you can't.
I wish.
Too
I wish
bad.
there was
It's
a
so
way
useful.
to do it. I wish there was a way to really use it. But it's just so complicated because I have to export the animation from here into a FBX and then send the FBX to the Maya scene. But then how do I sketch something if I don't have any reference? So I have to, if I want to have a reference, I have to export the geometry from the Maya scene to I don't know. It's just too complicated to get it going. So yeah. Plus, what I do at work is just animation. I'm not doing any character modeling or design or anything like that. So
I see.
so when we start building, we already start choosing colors. Obviously, I'm not gonna be really accurate right now with the colors, and I don't think I'm gonna do a lot of lighting, but I will do some just different colors just to obvious to get that structure to make sure that we feel this, especially well the sharpness of his face, right? So normally what I do is just get a nice big circle, start with that just as a base. And the good thing about this is because it's completely symmetrical, right? And I have this kind of center line here that helps me organize my work. But it's not, that's going to be just the underlying thing. I'm not going to use these a lot. It's just going to be something that's going to be underneath everything. And I normally gotta get the thickness tool and then just kind of make a little smaller on the bottom, right? And that's kind of that's good for now. I don't need much more for now. So the tool that I use the most is this guy over here, Capitalist. And the reason I use it is because it's like flat, but it also has a little bit of 3 dimensions. So it has this kind of thickness, and it has a little bit of roundness on the shape of it. And this, to me, it's almost like when you're doing clay sculpture, and you grab this stripe, the pieces of clay, right, and you just put them in there. So let's say I want to start building the jawline. So I get this thing here and grab tooling and getting that thing in there. And I'm gonna see if I can make that really round to get a nice kind of gradient out of it. Because the one thing is really important is really knowing the tool, like I said before, and knowing what you're working with. So I know how Quill works. I know that a stroke, you can deform it in this way. You can make it bigger, smaller, that way, but you cannot just make it like that. If I try to do that, it's gonna bend it. So if I want it to be bigger this way, I have to use the thickness tool, and that's gonna make it bigger in this direction, right? And the same for the color. If I know exactly how this works because I've been working in Quill for so long, and I know that I have a gradient that's gonna go in this direction, the same direction as the stroke. If I want a gradient the other way, I'm not gonna be able to do it horizontally. It's just not gonna work. It's gonna keep using this direction. So if I want that, I know that I have to do the opposite. I have to do a stroke that has that direction, right? So knowing those things, it's very important because that's, like I said before, you know your tool, and you try to make a take advantage of this part of this tool. And here, instead of just gonna, I'm not gonna do symmetry. I'm just gonna just do the same thing. I really don't mind. Uh, I could do symmetry, but sometimes it's just faster. I just do it like that, and that's it. Yeah, they need to really improve that the way you do symmetry, but that's okay for now.
Oh, Daniel, when you modeling this, do you also think of like in terms for animation?
Depends if I'm gonna animate the character or not. In But yeah, for animation, especially for the mouth, it's a good idea to do this process because it's gonna make it easier when you do the deformations. So for the lips, what I do is I use this one here. It has a slightly different shape. No, actually, no. Forget that. I'm gonna keep using this guy because no, which one was it? Is it this one? I know. I guess it's this one. I forgot. Oh no, yeah, no, that's right. Oh yeah, this one has different shape on the top and different shape on the bottom. So what I would do is use this one that has like a flat on the bottom and use that as the lips. Okay. So it's almost like working with clay. You have these pieces of clay, and then you deform them, and you put them in your sculpture. And I try to use that sketch as a guide for how these pieces need to be there. Let's go get this. Okay, so let's do another one for the bottom, and I want that kind of flat here, and that flat tip is really useful for mouths because now we have this kind of interior of the mouth in there that's really useful to have, especially for animation when you want to deform this with the grab tool and do different poses. It's going to be more anatomically correct. You see the jaw pivoting in the right place and deforming the lips in the right place, And if you just want the lips to be affected, you can use this and to do the different mouth shapes. And the way this is distorting is really cool. It feels like a lip. It kind of looks like a lip. It's really really. So I use this a lot.
It's kind of interesting because aren't your strokes kind of almost aligned in the same way you would almost 3D model a character in Blender or Maya to deform when animated?
Uh, I guess I don't know because I really am not a modeler. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
I don't know any 3D modeling. I mean,
No,
this is
yeah, it's
this is the closest thing that
it,
I've done to 3D modeling.
yeah. There because I'm not a guru at it or anything, but I know that you have to build like the each plane on the faces in a certain way because if you don't, they deform
Yes.
really
Yeah,
nasty.
totally,
Yeah. No, that's true.
But
That's true.
totally.
the way you've got the strokes built here, it almost is operating just the same way you'd have to build it. So like you've got your jaw done right, the lips curving over in that way.
Yeah, and that's kind of following the anatomy, but at the same time, it's good for animation.
Hmm.
So you're
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean, that's how
It's
the
really cool.
muscles of the mouth are actually structured, right? They're like a tube
exactly
around
that.
your face.
That's actually
And
the
Yeah.
that's actually the real anatomy of a mouth.
the
It's like
real anatomy. I
yeah,
know
It's
because
all
I'm
coming
taking
together.
an écorché class, Daniel, which is like in clay, and you're totally right. Everything you're saying. I mean, all the strips of clay
exactly.
are
So you
very
you, you have
much
the,
that.
this this
Hmm.
Yeah,
this this clay strips, and you're using that as a way to structure your model. And grab tooling is basically your biggest friend because you're just modeling and distorting everything and getting those.
yeah. You're saying exactly the same things as the instructor.
Yeah,
I
and
should show him your
Quill
video.
is
He would be very.
yeah, and Quill is such a fun tool to do this. It's much easier than modeling with Maya or ZBrush or anything like that. At least for me. I mean each person obviously has a different way of working, but for me it's just so much easier to do that because it combines sketching with modeling. And
It also
I'm much more of a sketch artist than a modeler
it
myself.
also removes a lot of technicality from it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like in 3D modeling programs, you're having to constantly sweat over how many points are in your planes, how your planes interact with the other planes, how they're going to move, how they're going to deform. If it's to be animated, but for this, it's just kind of put a stroke in, move it,
Yep.
you're done.
Totally.
Yeah, and
Watch your
also
polys.
in those modeling programs, bringing in a sketch the way Daniel did is literally impossible. Let alone sketch it in the program and then start modeling. So like that's unique to Quill as far as I.
Because you normally have to do like the reference photos that you've drawn and then cross them in 3D space. Like one's a front view, one will be
Exactly.
like a
Or
side view.
the graphics. Yeah, and this
And
is
That's
like you
usually
just
how
sketch it
I
in
work,
3D.
kind of in Quill Out. When like I'm comparing how Daniel's making a face to how I've made my faces in the past, and I tend to take a couple of faces that I want to combine together and not replicate completely, but I'll combine them to make like a new face that has the features of both and put them like one's the portrait, one's the uh, frontal view, and I'll kind of highlight like the jawline or the cheekbone, hairline, eyeline, and then kind of piece it together. But I'm really interested in seeing how he's constructing it because the way he's doing it is way better than I've done it.
This is so cool. I'm telling you, I'm like inspired beyond belief.
It's really cool. I was gonna say, Daniel, this really reminds me of like the way the muscles lie over the face.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
if you've heard of the Riley method, but there's like this thing called abstraction where it shows like the different muscle rhythms going on in the face and it connects very similarly to how you're doing it, just like everything interlocking in order to make like a cohesive structure. It's really cool.
And the other thing I thought about knowing the tool and using it to your advantage, right? So because I know each one of these strokes has a gradient that I can work with it, right? So I'm planning also my lighting as well as I'm doing my strokes. So if I have this stroke here for the forehead, let's say, and I have to be careful of these intersections, because I know the way the gradients work in Quill, I can totally do this soft shadow here that is gonna define the forehead, and this one could be a little bit sharper. Just gonna I can get a little sharper color right there, and it's really all about okay planning. Well, that's why we have the sketch because that allow us to plan it better, but also planning for when you're building, planning for your lighting. So a good idea also is to have some sort of reference. In this case, I have a picture, but if you have a drawing that you did yourself in 2D, that also can help you a lot uh, to plan. And then when you're building, you're also building, and you're kind of drawing the light at the same time as you're building the geometry. So it's really fun to do this in this way, and in my experience. So the nose for the nose, I'm gonna use more of a round brush, the circle sphere brush, and it's kind of a little divided into two parts here. Maybe I can do two parts of the nose right there. And really taking advantage of the thickness tool as well. It's really important because that gives you that nice kind of soft deformation from there to the like the bridge of the nose, right? And kind of using grab tool as a way to move vertices around as well. Because in modeling in Maya or the traditional modeling with any 3D package, you're basically moving vertex around, right? With Quill, you can do pretty much the same, just with using the grab tool, right? If I only want to move the vertex here, I can just go like that, and I only move this vertex right there, right? And I know because of the influence, I know how many vertex I'm grabbing. So it's applying some of the knowledge that you have in 3D modeling as well, but it's much more fun this way, obviously.
Daniel,
Hi,
do you
yeah,
ever find do you ever find that you wish you could tessellate, add more vertices to a quiz, or
yeah.
are you always
If
satisfied?
I have to plan this in advance. So if I want something to be much more high density, for example, this stroke, I want to make a higher density. So I go zoom out and I make a really huge uh, version of that stroke and then just reduce it. And that has a bigger density in geometry right there. So you can doing that, you can do things like those little bumps if you need to. I use those bumps to, for example, if you do clothes that have some sort of wrinkles, I use this a lot. Just kind of get that little
Hmm.
wrinkly shape.
Yeah.
But for this nose right here, I don't really need that much geometry. It doesn't really need to be that high density, so I'm just gonna keep it simple.
Hey Dan, so have you ever gone back to the lathing method that you first started with?
No, after I discovered this method, I was like, why am I gonna do lathing? I mean, I feel I have more control over because sometimes you want sharp
Hmm.
shadows. You don't always want soft shadows. Depends on
Hmm.
the character that you're building, obviously. I mean, this. I'm not saying this is for everything, but I'm finding that to do faces is just really useful to do it this way because of the things I'm talking about. Um, yeah, sharp shadows are something that I really like to do in traditional drawing. So this is my way to do sharp shadows, just getting those strokes. And again, I'm gonna use the flat section here to really get that nostril.
Just
Okay.
a heads up, you've got about 10 minutes till an hour.
Okay. Let's get a little faster. Just
It's also cool because whenever I made my face, I used Dan Frank's kind of mesh like thing where he
yeah,
overlaid the rows of strokes over each other. But this is so much more performance friendly.
Yeah, economical.
yeah. It has a lot of advantages. It's more
Oh man, this
anatomically
is awesome. Yeah, this is the
it's
best way.
anatomically correct, and at the same time you're saving strokes and you're saving geometry, and you
Animation friendly.
animation
Hmm.
friendly, and sharp shadows that are so important sometimes. Um,
Also, the way you described these strokes in Quill, I had no idea about the asymmetrical nature of that stroke. That it was flat
Oh
on
yeah.
one side.
yeah,
That's huge.
this stroke is kind of funny. It has this flat side here, and it has is like a sharp knife over here. For some reason, that's
Sometimes
the
it's
way.
great, but sometimes it's awful.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this I don't like this, but then suddenly you one day you realize, oh, hang on, this has a huge advantage. Let me use it. So first,
Totally, because the body is like that, right? It has a combo
exactly.
of
Look,
soft and hard
Yeah,
edge.
eyelids.
edges.
Eyelids are so easy to build with this thing because you get this really nice third dimension to the eyelid that you wouldn't get otherwise, and you can get much more precise modeling this way than if you go about any other technique, right? Like you can have an actual eyelid in there that you can close, and you can animate that later. You can do like a proper blink.
Right. And it has like the inside of the eyelid, the part that's pink. I don't know.
Yeah, you
Just that
could
part that's
duplicate it and
showing.
shrink it down
Yeah,
if
and
you ever
it's
It's
wanted to
also
do
the
it.
way you build in Z. Frankly, it's just that it's a little different, but you are building in that way.
exactly, and you're being anatomically correct at the same times, which is also a good thing because when you turn around the model, it's going to look properly. You're not going to see all the lumps and all these weird strokes. Like if you look at the silhouette right here, that's clean. It's exactly what I wanted.
Hmm.
And you don't get those lumps
Yeah,
and all,
because
all the all
the
the spaghetti
yeah,
strokes that Quill
yeah
normally has.
you're building it on a strong foundation. It makes sense. It's totally
Yeah, I have a sketch that I
anatomical.
did, and that sketch is my guideline. Um, and I also try to do facet different facets of the 3D model in here, for example, to really define the eyebrow and trying to get the different parts of that volume,
Hmm.
which is going to be useful later when I do lighting on this. The eyes, I'm gonna do a mirror because I think it's worth it. It's worth to do the mirror because they're so tricky to get right. Sometimes the eyes, the
Hmm.
eyeball, I don't draw
Hmm.
a sphere. I just do a stroke and I just bullshit and just that's it. And I pretty
That
much
really works.
I'm pretty much using always the same
Nice.
and a little thickness to get that um, thickness. Okay, if I get thickness, I know it's gonna be horizontally thicker here, so it kind of fills up that. In case I wanna animate the eyelid to be open more or whatever, close it. And the same for the eyelash. Just gonna get this eyelash shape. I think sometimes I just do like just a regular freehand stroke instead of and then I deform that and I just put it in there to get that nice thick tapering. And for the For the pupil, what I do normally is the same thing. I just try to get high density, like a nice round shape. So I do a very quick, just a single line. Sometimes with this is better. Just a little press on the trigger there, and it gets that really nice circle. And that it's your pupil.
Oh, that's so cool.
Just make sure that it's there. And the eyebrows, just gonna do kind of that same color. Just a freehand stroke, it's enough for that. And then grab tooling just to really put it in its place. So let's get that and just mirror all that stuff. Yeah.
So would there be any downside to just doing half the face and mirroring it
No, no, really, there's no downside. I just did that way because it's faster for me, but you could totally do half and then mirror it. But because the strokes are so easy to do, I'm just like I'm just gonna just do it again. I don't care. So yeah, let's just mirror that because this is harder to do to get the right shape for the eyes, and I really want them to be mirror. So let's just do mirror just for the eyes because they're very important that they're exactly a copy of each other. Otherwise, they start to look weird. And obviously, this is not going to work perfectly, but that's okay because faces in real life they're not perfectly mirror. So that's not a problem, honestly.
Gives it character.
It gives its own character, yes.
I want to watch a movie with characters made.
So this I discovered doing this while working on the remedy. I was trying to really get the shapes of the protagonist really sharp. I didn't want her to look with soft shadows and stuff. So I decided to start blocking things out this way, and I realized, oh, if I follow the anatomy, it just looks so much better. And I just went through that way, and I discovered, oh, well, this is a much better way to build faces, honestly. And also, I was trying to be economic because of the project was supposed to be on Quest, so I was also trying to get that. Uh, Actually, these guys are going to be different color. Okay. Color. So we got something going on. We hide this, and we got the next part of the process will be to kind of start filling up all these gaps and stuff. But we got a good base already. Kind of sometimes I just kind of start doing some of that. Just unify the colors.
That looks so cool, Daniel.
And I need a little more strokes here. So
We have just hit an hour.
Oh, okay. So I guess that's enough to show you the process. You get the idea.
Man, this is so inspiring. I love seeing this. This is
And also, like, it's so cool to like, oh, I can do this shadow here now because the nose is projecting a little shadow onto this part of the face, so I can get that working there. And obviously that's not the end of it because you can always grab tool the whole thing and make sure, even if you had a good sketch, it doesn't matter because maybe, oh, I wanna fix this, I wanna make this shape a little more expressive this way, a little bit more cartoony. Maybe I can make the nose a little, or maybe the whole front of the face can be a little further, or no, the other way. And because I'm rotating my hand, I can just rotate this a little bit like that and get more shapes in there that are important for me for the portrait. And again, the lighting, it's so much easier to plan and to figure out if you have this limited amount of strokes in there. I guess we don't have any more time, but let me just do the lips quickly and then we can call it done. So, oh yeah, I distorted this a lot now, huh? Oh yeah, well, an important thing is the bottom of the jaw. That's something that's normally left over that I forget to do it. and when I realize I haven't done it, I get into panic mode. So the best way that I realize how to do it is just get a darker color, obviously, and then just grab that and then just move the thumbstick as you draw the stroke, so it makes it thicker at the bottom, at the end. Is that all right? And then I use the thickness tool to get that in there. Just try to get that nice sharp corner. More or less. This needs to be thicker, I guess. Yeah, it's a bit tricky to get that right and make sure that it doesn't show up too much. Here, it should be only visible when you look from below, really. Unless it's a character with a softer jawline. I use the neck shape also to connect with the jawline. And what I do is just normally just kind of use the thickness tool there, and that gives you that nice connection there with the jaw. And the lips are tricky to do, especially people with thick, meaty lips. Those are hard to do. But before that, I will do the interior. The interior is going to be completely dark. Just going to bend it. It's not, it needs to be a little thicker. Okay, so the lips are pretty thick, so maybe the brush, the sphere brush will be the best. Sorry, it's gonna be a little bit more red, more pink. In the case of this guy, I'm just gonna do maybe more geometry. And maybe I'll do half and half. And because of that flat end in there, it gives you like a nice sharp corner. And then reduce the thickness in there in the corner, the mouth corner. So maybe just gonna do a half and half for this guy. That also, doing the half and half also will help with the lighting if I need to do different shades of light. And the bottom one, maybe I'm gonna do just one stroke. Just make it thicker on the middle. And grab tool. And here the ideal thing is that these strokes are on top. So that way we have this nice sharpness in there. So here we have all of this stuff. Maybe just grab tool everything. Well, and the bottom of the nose is pretty tricky too. Just gonna get that similar way. Just kind of get that shadow color there. And grab tool it. And for the nostrils, I'm just gonna make it like a dark color. That's it. Doesn't matter. That's not. Doesn't matter. All right, let's just finish this. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
This is Matt.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sticking. I wanted to
No.
finish it in the 1 hour, but it looks like I'm not gonna be able to.
Hour and 10, whatever.
It
It's
looks
good.
great.
We get the idea. Curly hair, you just go loop de loops on it. You're good.
Yeah, just paint it and that's it.
I'm very curious if you ever wanted to pick this up again. Tune in because it's really good.
Maybe I can just do that. Maybe let's, unless somebody else wants to do a class next Saturday, let me save it. And
Yeah,
maybe
that would be amazing.
And next week I continue if that's all right.
Man, are you kidding me? It's
I'd be fine with that.
it's
And we can
a
start
gift.
cleaning up all
Yeah,
this
Daniel,
stuff here.
You'll be
And
done once you have every face in that picture done.
yeah, we can do all the faces in Money Heist. All right, guys.
Funny you say you're not a modeler because you did a great job. Thanks. Take it.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
Thanks, Daniel.
Hit about 30 viewers today. That was cool.
Awesome. Thanks for sticking.
Oh, awesome.
See you later. I'm gonna stop the recording now.